Did I introduce myself? I might not have. You're like, who is this stranger that comes up to the stage and asks us about cake over and over again? My name is Zahra Billu. I'm the Executive Director of the Bay Area Office of CAIR, the Council on American Islamic Relations. We pride ourselves on being the oldest CAIR chapter in the country, but in recent months, in addition to being inspired by the community that has rallied around us in the Bay Area, I've had the opportunity to visit CAIR Florida, CAIR Oklahoma, CAIR Ohio, CAIR Chicago, and now you. And what I'm seeing is that over and over again, we are not in this work alone. You stand with us, and at the same time, you have questions. You come to this banquet because someone invites you, but you want to know what we've been up to for the past year. You see some of it on television, but you're wondering what happens at the office, what happens every day. Because though Jacob is on television a lot, he is not on television every day. I could tell you about the work that we do in the Bay Area, but this isn't my banquet, this is his. And so with that, I'd like to ask you to join me in inviting up to the stage part of the CAIR-Philadelphia team who will give you a perspective on what they've been working on, what motivates them, and why they're so appreciative of your support. Please join me in welcoming the CAIR-Philadelphia team to the stage.
Muslims,
Christian,
and Jew,
humanity of different hues.
At a crossroads in the American experience.
We are a nation consumed by contradiction.
conceived in liberty and justice,
but built on the bondage
Of the captives in chains.
and the near total annihilation of those who were here before. And now, at this darkening hour, we are called upon to determine whether this nation moves forward down the road of justice
Or returns to years of legal racism, misogyny, environmental degradation, and the unregulated pursuit of corporate profit, no matter the human cost.
The future of the nation hangs in the balance.
It is this challenge that has brought each of us to CAIR, the current stop on our life journeys that began decades ago from 5 very different points on the globe. My parents, grandparents, and all my ancestors were the offspring of Mother Egypt. She was our beloved. In 1968, my father immigrated to America, followed 4 years later by my mother. They came to the US not only to pursue degrees in higher education, but also for the dream of raising their children in a democratic society. My father was all too familiar with how an authoritarian regime could shatter innocent lives, as his father was unjustly deprived of his property and his older brother spent several years in as a political prisoner in Nasser's jails. My father told me the day he arrived in America made him feel like a bird freed out of a cage.
My parents were born to working-class families in Kayseri, near Cappadocia region in central Anatolia, Turkey. My father and uncle were among the first in the family to receive university education. They traveled to Istanbul to attend college, finding themselves at the center of political movements of the 1960s. Looking back at his time of activism, my father often reminds me the story of the little bird that carried water to Prophet Abraham's fire. When mocked by other animals because the small amount of water she carried in her mouth could not put off the fire, the bird said in response, "Let it be. It will be known that I stood on the side of the truth.
My great-grandparents were Roman Catholics from the once Muslim lands of Al-Andalus, who immigrated to Puerto Rico in the early years of the 20th century. I was born Margarita Martinez. I was to the 14th child to Eladio Martinez Lopez and Obdulia Soto Diaz. Throughout our family history, once European blood is now blended with indigenous Taino, Latin American, Caribbean Indian, and African blood. Hence, my mother's given name, Obdulia.
In the year 1905, the Russian Tsar unleashed a series of attacks against the defenseless Jewish population of Eastern Europe. Hundreds were murdered and wounded, including my great-grandmother, who lost her sight in one eye when a bullet grazed her face. The attacks unleashed a wave of immigration as over 2 million Jewish immigrants streamed into the teeming cities of the eastern seaboard. Promised an America of fabulous wealth and easy money, the immigrants instead found themselves living in overcrowded tenement apartments, often working 16 hours a day in the sweatshops of the garment industry. Drawing upon the values of social justice manifested by the prophets of the Bible, the Jewish immigrants, among them Jacob Ginsburg, my grandfather, struggled for a future when, in the words of Prophet Amos, justice shall roll down like waters and righteousness like a mighty stream.
My mother was born in Memphis, Tennessee during a time where local officials routinely delayed the removal of white-only signs from public accommodations, even after federal mandates to do so. My father immigrated to the United States from Ghana in the early 1970s as a university student, and upon his arrival experienced a level of racism and xenophobia that he still finds it difficult to speak of to this day. As an African-American reared below the Mason-Dixon line, I find significant portions of my personal narrative's arc bending along the color line that Du Bois referenced in The Souls of Black Folks when he said the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. And we often found ourselves, like Du Bois, asking, how does it feel to be a problem? I spent the bulk of my formative years dutifully attending gatherings in traditional Black churches in Tennessee and Georgia. And like scores of my forebears, I found a place to tabernacle with God in those cramped edifices with stained glass windows and creaky floors.
I was born in mid-century in the City of Angels and grew up just as the time when Senator Joseph McCarthy had unleashed his witch hunts against suspected communist enemies. Thousands of American citizens were blacklisted from their chosen professions, including my father. One day, FBI agents knocked on our door and demanded to know whether my parents knew any communists. When they finally left, my mother was crying.
My family moved to the city of brotherly love, Philadelphia, in 1985. I was the only Muslim in my school at the time, and yes, Islamophobia was alive and well. There are memories that never escape you, and one of those for me was sitting in my 10th grade biology class around the holidays. The teacher wished us a Merry Christmas. One of the students asked, "But what if you're Jewish?" The teacher replied, "Then Happy Hanukkah." Then the student asked, "But what if you're Muslim?" And the teacher replied, "Then get the hell out of my class." To which the entire class erupted in laughter. I was stunned, shocked, horrified, and yet I did not respond. As a young student, I was not equipped with the tools to be able to respond appropriately.
Ours was a home steeped in both social justice and Jewish culture. Civil rights and ban the bomb marches were family outings, and when I was 12 years old, my parents took me to hear Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. speak to thousands in a rally in the Watts neighborhood of Los Angeles.
Struggles were true, but love and the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala led me to journey back in time, connecting my roots to Islam. My character, demeanor, and Allah's mercy led me to reversion to Al-Islam.
Meet my twin sister Hümeyra. In the year 2000 in Turkey, we took our university entrance exam. I went to the exam focused, trying to achieve my best. Hümeyra went to the same exam in tears. She came home crying. As a matter of fact, she had been crying on each school day for the past 2 years.
I stand before you, having traveled a difficult path through trials and tribulations, struggling to maintain my identity, being mocked by friends and family. Have you joined a cult? Have you been forced to wear this veil? Do you have cancer? Do you know that Islam is just a cultural practice? You poor thing, you've given up your culture and your identity.
At the time, in 2000, female students were prevented from going to schools wearing hijabs. The government said girls had to take off their hijabs before walking into schools, including religious high schools and theology departments at universities. Hümeyra tried a wig for a while, in tears. She tried to skip school, in tears. She went to this most important exam, in tears.
Upon graduating from high school, I made the decision to wear hijab. It represents my faith in God, my pride in my identity, and has empowered me to be a strong American Muslim woman.
My twin, my dear sister Hümeyra, cried almost every day. She was consoled by our loving mother and father. They told her to keep her head up. They said, "This too shall pass." I was sad, of course, but nobody told boys or men what to wear, what not to wear.
Each new decade appeared to usher a new cause to center stage, from the African American freedom struggle to ending America's war in Vietnam, from women's liberation movement to the dangers of nuclear power, from stopping intervention in El Salvador to denouncing the evils of South African apartheid.
As an Hispanic Muslim, a wife, a nurse, a counselor, an advocate for the youth and community empowerment, a proud mother of 4 beautiful Palestinian children, half Palestinian, half Puerto Rican. This is me, Margarita Miriam Abu Awade. I speak, read, and write Spanish, Arabic, and English. I stand tall and proud to be a Puerto Rican Muslim American.
But ultimately, what had the strongest pull on me was that small piece of sacred geography in the Middle East, home to a seemingly endless and unsolvable political conflict between Israelis and Palestinians.
My college years were spent in Egypt, where I lived for 8 years. Those years helped to strengthen my bond with the country my parents emigrated from. This bond continued even after I returned to the States. This bond is the reason I was glued to the television from January 25th to February 18th of 2011. I watched the events of Tahrir Square unfold with jubilation, fear, anxiety, hope, and aspirations of freedom and social justice. عيش حرية عدالة اجتماعية.
It is not easy to oppose one's own community, but as the years dragged on and Israel's temporary occupation of Palestinian lands became literally cemented, in fact, with the construction of hundreds of illegal Israeli settlements, and the possibility of peace became ever more remote, thousands of American Jews, like myself, broke with the community consensus and became open critics of Israeli policy, openly championing Palestinian self-determination. And although we were denounced as traitors, terrorist supporters, and self-hating Jews, Like the little bird that brought water to Prophet Abraham's fire, we knew we were on the side of justice.
One of the chief crimes of the transatlantic slave trade and its pernicious progeny, Jim Crow, lynching, racial profiling, and police brutality, is the way in which it stripped people of their humanity, divorced them from their cultural heritage, and perpetuated that reality for centuries. It's for that reason, whenever I read firsthand accounts of oppressions like slave narratives, I'm reminded yet again why I feel so compelled to fight for the cause of liberty.
While Humaira couldn't attend a regular college because she was forbidden to wear her hijab in the university, she did attend a distant education program and became a writer, an activist. My twin sister's experience attuned me to civil rights. It made me realize male privilege. It motivated me to stand tall against the violation of the civil and religious rights. As the Director of Outreach and Education for CAIR-Philadelphia, I work to honor this lesson in service of our beautiful community.
Today, I continue to fight to affirm the dignity and the inherent worth of all people through my work with CAIR and with the Philadelphia Muslim community. In that way, I continue the work of those who came before me. It's my legacy to uphold.
It is precisely because of the stories that you have heard tonight that we stand here before you in service to CAIR and its mission.
Defending civil liberties by offering free legal services to dozens of clients facing religious discrimination and harassment, as well as overzealous government agents.
Empowering American Muslims through such programs as our annual Muslim Capital Day, which brings over 100 Muslim leaders and our allies to Harrisburg to meet with our elected representatives.
Enhancing the understanding of Islam by our free courses, seminars, and workshops, presented over 120 times in 2017 alone.
And encouraging the interfaith dialogue and mutual understanding by our participation in numerous city and statewide coalitions that promote justice and liberty for all, such as the annual Philadelphia Interfaith Peace Walk.
So let it be known that the Philadelphia Muslim community, that the American Muslim community will not disappear in the face of bigotry,
nor go silent in the face of hate.
This is our right and our duty, and none of us would be here but for the support of our families, and we would like for them to join us on stage at this time, please.
We would also like to invite our dear executive committee members and advisory board members whose guidance and advice lead us in our work.
And so as you stand with us tonight, I would like you to repeat after me as we pledge to make this world what it should be. Tonight, we pledge before God and the Constitution
We pledge before God and the Constitution
to work towards a nation of liberty
to work toward a nation of liberty
and justice
and justice
and free health care
and free
and
healthcare
free daycare
and free
and
daycare
free college tuition
and
and
free college tuition,
sustainable energy
sustainable energy,
and no guns in our schools
and
and
no
no
guns in our schools,
and an end to Islamophobia and all forms of hatred and bigotry
and
and an end to Islamophobia and all forms of hatred and bigotry,
and peace
and peace
and freedom
and freedom
for all.
for all. Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Would you join me in giving them one more round of applause? It is one thing to call an FBI agent back on behalf of a community member and say, "What do you want with my client?" It is a whole other thing to get up here and do that kind of dramatic presentation.